it must be a new feature of Zoom now that it tells me that it's recording, so you can't sneakily record me. Okay. Well, welcome to the last session, as Kathy said, and thank you for all your participation so far. It has been wonderful. We were actually talking to Maria and Jessica from Whakakatahi this week, and just telling them how great a group you were with interaction, great questions, getting assignments in, just wonderful. So well done on that. And just one sort of last hurdle to get over, which is that safe system assessment that you're going to be producing. We've tried to streamline it as much as we can for you. So you're just really doing enough to show us that you understand the process, you understand the categorization of exposure, likelihood, severity, and categorizing your treatments into primary or supporting, and packaging all of that up into a decent format. So hopefully you're moving that along quite nicely. But this session, there's quite a bit of time set aside in case people do have questions. And people, if you've got a question about your safe system assessment, odds on others probably have that same question. So please either type it into the chat or just pop your hand up and you can ask it directly, and we can nut that out here. And so at any point along today, I'm happy to do that. I do have a few slides for today and a little bit of content around safe system assessment policy, procedure, how it's going to play out or is playing out around both Australia and New Zealand. And I suppose New Zealand, there's a lot of unknowns in how this really plays out into the future. But that's an opportunity for you to have a think about how it might work within your organisation and your area, and maybe ask some questions around that or make some comments around that. So quite a bit of time for interaction today. But I'll just check with Kathy on any administrative things to cover off before I jump into a little bit of content. And as I say, pop your hand up if you want to ask questions or type them into the chat about your safe system assessment, which hopefully you're at least starting to think about by now.
Thank you, Ken. Absolutely. Everyone is tracking along really nicely. If you haven't been able to get on to do those quizzes at the end of every session, do get on and do that. And we might even have a little bit of time left over at the end of today's session that might give you the opportunity to do that. But do get in touch if you're having any troubles with that one.
Wonderful. Okay. Okay, thanks, Kathy. So I will get started, but and I suppose we've called this one sort of process. It's a second sort of process one associated with safe system assessment, but a little bit of policy guidance perhaps as well. So we're going to talk about benefits of safe system assessment, sort of some independent evaluations that have been done on a number of safe system assessments into how effective they are. So I'll take you through that. Generally, safe system assessments within an infrastructure project and explain the process that seems to be the way industry has adopted this, and a bit more on the difference between road safety audits and safe system assessments, because that's a very common question that people will ask is, oh, well, why do I need to do this? We do road safety audits as part of the project, or we're going to do them. What's the difference? Why is there any use? I actually want to start with this diagram. So this is a lot in this, so I'm going to spend a bit of time on it. This is a chart from an independent evaluation. So Blair Turner, some of you might know, New Zealander actually, but was engaged to do an independent evaluation of the first 30, or not the first, but 35 safe system assessments undertaken in Victoria on major infrastructure projects. These are really big infrastructure projects. we're talking like bypass, town bypasses, major sort of freeway upgrades, and yeah, really big stuff. So 35 of those. And what we did was basically used a crash prediction model. So crash prediction models being things like ANRAM, IRAP, IRR, or the like, and they basically take the attributes of a road, relate those to research knowledge, take the crash history of the road, pack that in there, and then sort of are able to predict fatal serious injuries going forward based on alterations to that. So what we've got here in this graph is the fatal serious injury on the y-axis there. So this is predicted fatal serious injury crashes for a 20-year period going forward. Also takes into account any growth predictions, modeling of growth of traffic or pedestrians or cyclists or motorcyclists. So you've got fatal serious injury crashes, and then I'll take you through each of these. So this one here is if no projects were to happen. So you've got these 35 areas, stretches of roads, towns there that exist, and the baseline here is just no project happens, so no bypass or no upgrades, and put through the model, and it spat out that over the next 20 years in these areas, you're going to see around 8,000, so 7,900 serious injuries and 344 fatalities in those areas. So you can see there's quite a bit of road we're talking about. So then the original design was put through the crash prediction model. And this design, we're talking a sort of functional level design, maybe a little bit scaled back from functional level, actually, maybe a bit more conceptual, but there was a bit of meat to it. And they had been produced by the big design houses, those sort of multinational design houses that are in all of our cities and continue to push out designs. And I think 33 or 32 of them had been subject to a early stage road safety audit as well. So they had that, and then they had a bit of review as well, peer review or quality check internally. And what those showed was a reduction in fatal and serious injuries there. And so we went down to 6,700 serious injuries, 286 fatalities. The safe system assessment was then done and provided back. And if they were to take on the high sort of aligned safe system assessment recommendations, so the primary recommendations and some of the supporting, what that did is brought the numbers down to 3,890 serious injuries and 167 fatalities. Then they got that. The client receives those safe system assessments and says, okay, well, I can do some of that. I can't do that one for this reason. I can't do this one because the budget won't allow it. I can't do this one because the community won't accept it. I can't do this one because I don't think it meets the design standards. I'm not comfortable with that. Whatever, they had, there's lists and lists of excuses. And that then goes up to 5,298 serious injuries, 227 fatalities. Okay, this tells me quite a story. And I'm just going to run you through that. And then I'm happy to take your comments or your insights or your questions about it. The first thing it tells me is that the designs that were being produced, by just run-of-the-mill road design, improve road safety. Okay, so we can't say they're not improving road safety because they're certainly doing things better. We're building, just tens of billions of dollars of infrastructure here, and it's going to improve things. It's probably got lots of other benefits as well, freight efficiency and um, different things like that. So there you go, you've got a benefit. Next thing it sort of says is that, wow, look what we can do if we, that's pretty impressive. We can get a big drop from just what's being produced there if we took on all these safe system assessment recommendations. So there's a lot more that can be done. This difference here, this is one that I kind of say, well, this is, real world conditions of why things can't be done. And I think there's a massive amount of work to be done to bring this further down. And it does involve things like capacity building in terms of willingness to accept different treatments, to move things forward a bit, but also funding, political commitment. People often feel, well, the community just won't accept that, or I'm not even going to put that up because it's just not, something that we do, those sorts of challenges. So I think we've got to work heavily on that. But the difference, I suppose, between that line and this line, I mean, that's just immediate win, immediate benefit out of a safe system assessment that literally just going through this process has provided. And a group of safe system assessors looking, analysing, scoring, and coming up with alterations to the designs to progress things forward brings about that. And these were a variety of safe system assessment teams from different organisations. So that's pretty exciting in my mind. Immediate gains to be had, continual work to be done. And what we are hopefully going to see is that these initial designs also start to come down as designers continually get this feedback from safe system assessments, continue to build their understanding of safe system principles and design features that align well with safe system principles. And so that will continue to come down. The one thing I think I found quite interesting, and I did have to spend a bit of time working with understanding the crash prediction model and spend a lot of time with Blair understanding how this has happened, is this. And I was like, well, hang on a second. We've done, these are safe system assessments, and safe systems all about elimination of death and serious injury. Yet we've still got in these, even with our high recommendations, like the top of the list, we've got a lot of death and serious injury there. And the reality is that what we are even suggesting as our sort of best things still has what we call a residual risk. And when you look at what makes up this, they're very interesting things. The infrastructure was really, would be really amazing, but we still see a lot of motorcyclists involved in these crashes that weren't getting the improvements. If the safe system assessments had things like motorcycle underrun protection, some really good features we know help motorcyclists, but that wasn't enough to eliminate death and serious injury for motorcyclists. So we're still seeing motorcycle deaths on there. There was still some crashes that were predicted under sort of extreme behavior, like very, very extreme behavior, and that was in there. There was is still some small amounts of sort of pedestrian style stuff and some cyclist stuff, even though there were quite great facilities because it was sort of real world use of what's coming. But what that says to me is that, it's not, well, our toolkit isn't complete. Well, certainly from an infrastructure perspective, we just need to continue to work to innovate to try to address these, come up with new ways to do treatments, new things, push boundaries. It also really highlights that the infrastructure is just one element of the safe system. These safe system assessments did have recommendations outside of just infrastructure, so enforcement recommendations, different post-crash care recommendations, a few other things like that. But because I suppose those are such statewide or national things, to isolate it back to an individual project was something. There is a evaluation report on this, which sort of talks about some of this, but the ability to say that, well, okay, you've suggested a dedicated bay for enforcement, to say that will, always be there to always impact, well, it's part of a bigger picture system for the network. So, it also says to me, this is real. It's not like they haven't evaluated and just gone, oh, well, this will be, eliminate everything. And we kind of know that. So, the work is still to be done. So I think that sums up sort of the evaluation. I think it's very interesting. I think it's a good way to show people why safe system assessments are important in our projects, especially when told that so many of these have been subject to that road safety audit beforehand, and changed according to that. So I don't know, I find this output fascinating. Let's have some questions or comments, please.
Thanks, Ken. We've got Ping who's got a comment, so just going to get some audio there.
Hi, Ken.
Yes. Hello, Ping. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I work at Auckland Transport, and my comment was, we're working on rolling out the use of SSAF more broadly in our organisation. And one learning we've had is once projects get to the original design phase, if you call it that, certain decisions have already been made, which means if we do an SSAF, then we say things can be out of scope, constraints with funding. And I'm really interested to learn more about how we can apply the principles of SSAF rather than necessarily doing the assessment more at the no project phase, so that we get safe system thinking in right at the beginning before we actually have a drawing on paper. And I'd just be really keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, that's wonderful to hear that thinking's happening. And certainly what we're talking about there is trying to pull this line, or this original design down as far as we possibly can. So that transition from there to there goes down significantly. And first thing I'll say is, like, original design is a pretty broad term in terms of when these were assessed. So some of these were, as I say, sort of almost your reference design. So they were ready to sort of take it out to market and for a design and construct. So they provided the reference design. So they are quite well progressed, as you say, and you kind of locked into a few things then. But some of them were more at that optioneering stage, and there were multiple different options on the table, and looking for scoring and then suggestions with all of them. So there is flexibility as to where and when this happens. The advantage of that safe system assessment, a little bit like a road safety audit, is that independence and that fresh look at it, an unconstrained look at it in terms of just safety and trying to push safe system boundaries and challenge. The project managers, designers are so constrained in all of these different things, and such a complex task with infrastructure that you're thinking about budgets and community and environmental and cultural heritage, and the list goes on, and they're balancing and trying to work out things, to have that just independent look at it is actually a really helpful part of a safe system assessment. But nonetheless, like building capacity and thinking within the designers and the project managers and those, conjuring up the concepts will certainly help us a lot. And so what I'd say is that there's a few things to do. First of all, safe system assessments as a full process, is this exercise that you're going through at the moment. But what you can do is this very light touch look at your design, if you're a designer or project manager, using the matrix and just having a very quick think about it, where you can get benefit as you're designing. So there's a little bit of help there if you have some basic understanding of the safe system assessment process, and it can be done very sort of quickly on the side. So that's a nice little way to do that. I think continuing to build capability and capacity within design areas and project managers is really important, even if they don't sort of think that that's their thing. It can really help out. So that can be done in a huge variety of ways. And I know Auckland Transport's been doing a huge amount in that space to get these principles across. So there's a bit of capacity building there. Also, the act of having safe system assessments done is a wonderful capacity capability building exercise for a designer or a project manager, because it's like road safety audits, which we've been doing for near on 30 years now across Australia and New Zealand. Every time a designer gets a road safety audit, they're learning from the things that were put in that, and they update. And the next time they're doing a design like that, they go, okay, the auditor was saying that about the offset of barrier. Okay, I know that now. I'm going to have to make sure it's like that. It'll be this. It's the same thing with safe system assessments. And if they're getting feedback that, okay, you're trying to operate a signalized intersection here at 70 kilometers an hour, and it just doesn't align with safe system principles, and it's scored badly, and we've made recommendations. The next time they're doing that, they'll go, oh, yeah, okay, that's not a great way to operate. So in and amongst itself, it will be doing some education and feedback. So there's a few ideas for you, Ping. I hope there's something in that.
Yes, thank you, Ken. That's really great. Thank you.
Thanks for popping your hand up, and lovely to talk to you. Any other questions? Anybody else want to make any comments?
We've got another question, Ken. Is there any cost-benefit comparison about this study?
Yeah, so that is a really great question, because the cost was not sort of looked into that in this study, and I suppose it could be done. There were a couple of interesting ones when I looked at the 35 that they had taken to evaluate. Some of them were from Safe System Solutions, some of them were from other consultancies, and a few were done from internally within Victorian government of very, very different departments. But and so my take on it is most of them had extra cost for the project, but it was small. I mean, we're not talking like, but small differences in cost. A few of them had lower costs, I would say, to get better alignment with safe system principles. One stands out in my mind very, very clearly, which was a bypass. And I'm just going to remove that. A bypass of a town, and essentially their cross section involved like a 12 meter, 15 meter median, and then a lane and a lane and a massive clear zone, and a lane. This is a sort of greenfield bypass. And so just the sheer amount of land that they were going to need to acquire, the vegetation removal was huge. and even just the earthworks and the cuts and things were big. And so this was because they were really going at that massive envelope. The safe system assessment sort of said, well, continuous barriers is going to be the go anyway, and so you can sort of bring everything in, barrier here, reasonable offset, 4.5, 5 meters, 4.5, 5 meters, and then your lanes sort of brought everything in, and so you really sort of narrowed the whole cross section, the land, and yeah, it was I dare say would save them many millions of dollars on that project to get better alignment. So it's not always the case that it costs more money, but I will agree that in most cases to get sort of from here down to here involved bits and pieces more. Continuous barriers, maybe intersection forms that were a little bit bigger. So, but I don't have a dollar figure to that. Other questions or comments, Ken?
That's all for now, Ken. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that's something of interest, and there's certainly a couple of published papers on it if anybody needs to use that. Will be interesting to sort of collect a lot more. This was done sort of 4 years ago or something now on some early projects. It'd be interesting to see that after maybe some time rolling safe system assessments out in New Zealand. All right, just a few dot points of benefits of safe system assessments. A great way of determining how well a project aligns with safe system principles as you're discovering. Good method to compare design options. So that's something that I really like in the sense that a road safety audit was never that thing to compare project designs. You'd identify issues with each design, and sure, an auditor may sometimes help with some opinions on which is better or not, or maybe that provides some information to the project managers to help make decisions when they've got options on the table. But this is a really clear way of doing that with some scoring. And it's very much something that looks quite impressive from the sense of, if they've got their traffic modelling has been plonked on the table, the big juicy traffic modelling report with, level of services and lots of numbers and things like that. That was often put down on the table, and there's no almost questioning of it. You go, well, that's what it said. I mean, yes, the traffic people might have a little bit of debate about some specific little things here and there, but it was generally, that's the traffic model said it's going to go from level of service, B to C. This is unacceptable. Often we put the road safety audit down on the table, and then road safety would be this sort of opinion-based back and forth around the project team, and they go, I think it'll be fine, and they're all coming from different opinions on things. But what I've found is when you put the safe system assessment report and it's got the graph and the numbers, people look at it kind of the way they look at the traffic modelling report, and they go, okay, well, it's score of this, and it's going up to this, and that's unacceptable. So what are we going to do to change it? So it's a great, I think, just tool for us from that perspective to be in that sort of fight, if we call it that, at the start on how these projects go in a real manner. Now, I mean, I'm not great with traffic modelling and the like, but people I work with who are really great with it, they've made assumptions in there. They've done bits and pieces. There's a bit of subjectivity to some things. Where they've got data, great. Where they haven't, they've made a call on it, and they've plunked it together. So just the sort of, the way people receive those reports, we need in the road safety space to be able to present stuff in a manner that people receive it in the same way. They just go, okay, well, that's what it says. And I think that's especially important for road safety, because the traffic modeling is like the dark art of this thing, and it's very complex and the like. But people see road safety as quite a simplistic thing, and it doesn't matter whether it's the person who's never done road safety before in their life. They'll have an opinion on what's beneficial, what's not, what's going to work, what's not going to work from a safety perspective. So for us to be able to have this, I think is important. So there's a few other things, I suppose, packed into that. Is if you are sort of umming and ahhing about the effectiveness and how of something and how it will change your scoring, you can go back to things like crash reduction factors or crash modification factors to help you understand what it should be doing to the overall score. And then it's very hard for you to exactly attribute that to exposure, likelihood, or severity, because it's like a crash reduction factor of 20% or something is a combination of the exposure, likelihood, and severity. But you would be expecting your scores to be, going down overall by about that amount. How you distribute it is then important. Okay, so the next one here, information on design changes that will move a project proposal closer to safe system objectives. So that's certainly a given. Methods to assist planners, designers, and project managers to move the safe system approach from theory to practice. And again, just a wonderful, wonderful one to take philosophical ideas and make on-ground decisions based on them, or these principles, and pop them onto the ground. And it's a great sound basis for future planning design of road infrastructure. Okay, so let's go through this process. You're managing an infrastructure project or the like, and where are we going to be doing safe system assessments? And this comes into sort of what Ping was mentioning there a bit. The safe system assessment is best done, quite early in a project. I personally like to see some lines on paper and enough meat to understand sort of what's happening, but the principles can be applied very early on. Once you are into the details of a project, though, like you've got a detailed design, the safe system assessment isn't the greatest tool. I mean, it still scores, and you do your scoring, you can show how good things will be. That's can be an advantage. But when you're starting to make recommendations on fundamental intersection form and big sort of decisions that were made back here, you got no hope of making these big changes. You're locked in. The project's locked in. And we have done safe system assessments on the big 500-page design set with the full works, drainage, plans, lighting, and then made recommendations that the intersection forms should be completely changed. And you think they were changed? Of course they weren't changed. I mean, they wanted to get this out to contract and were told that they had to do a safe system assessment, and they did not want any of that. Road safety audits tend to work better in these stages, and road safety audits do that. They're very sort of specific look at things, and maybe it's the way they're presented as well that just offer the project managers and designers a bit more comfort, I suppose, in what they're doing. Anyway, that's the nice process. You might do a safe system assessment down here to check how they went. And a few differences And this is changing, this is evolving over time, but the few differences between a road safety audit and safe system assessment, both of them look at issues that impact the likelihood of crashes and do them really well. Issues that identify the severity of crashes, I would say sometimes, like road safety audits should always, and it's certainly part of what is required. So certainly the New Zealand process guidelines for road safety audits talk about severity. And a little interesting quirk on New Zealand's process is you talk about the likelihood of severe crashes. So sort of like you have to get your head around that, because it's likelihood. Your matrix is likelihood by likelihood, but it's likelihood of the crash happening and likelihood of it resulting in death and serious injury on the other axis, which is your sort of risk matrix used in road safety audits, which is fine, but it is saying severity is important. But what we often find is that auditors in practice are sort of ignoring a high energy crash because the likelihood has been reduced to what in their mind is sort of acceptable, if that makes sense. And the absolute classic is the signalized intersection, where the auditor is talking all about sort of sight lines to the signals, the use of LEDs, whether mast arms are required, line marking, all of this sort of advanced warning signage and everything like that. All great, important stuff, but sort of ignoring the fact, consciously or subconsciously, no, subconsciously, I would say, ignoring the fact that when that red light is run and a crash happens, the severity of that crash is going to be bad. So, but I do put sometimes, and I'm hoping at some point soon we'll be able to give that a tick as well. Exposure to crashes. Road safety audits really pack exposure into the likelihood and mix all that up together. It's very clear cut in that safe system assessment. Recommendations to improve road safety outcomes, well, they both do that. Considers all road users, and they both should do that. Focuses on fatal and serious injury only. Audits tend to look at all crashes. So minor crashes are really, looked at in depth as well. So safe system assessments are more just focused in on that high-end stuff, which aligns with our road safety strategies, which is what we're trying to address. And yeah, so that's the other way around there. Investigate safer vehicles. So a full safe system assessment, we're going to look into the vehicles using the road, how they use it, and a few other things. So I'd say yes there. Safer people, I'll say sometimes in a road safety audit. Certainly, I think that as a road safety auditor, well, road safety auditors will be thinking about, okay, well, there's a pub on the corner there, or this is a real sort of nightclub district, and so they're going to have intoxicated pedestrians. So auditors can be pretty good at that as well, thinking about desire lines of pedestrians, thinking about the way people will use the road. So there is a bit of that. Really clearly comes out when you're asked those prompt questions in a full safe system assessment. Impact on maintenance. Well, yeah, this is sort of, again, integrated into the prompt questions in a safe system assessment. Investigates the impact on post-crash care. I don't think I've ever seen a road safety audit go into anything in that space. Thinking about safe and efficient post-crash care. So it makes recommendations to redesign the project if required in terms of, big changes. As a road safety auditor, you're generally told your job is not to redesign this project or influence that. You're identifying some issues and sort of let them make the call. Yes, you might make some recommendations, but really you're sort of in there with them in a safe system assessment. And encourages innovative designs. Now, put a cross on against road safety audits, and that's probably a bit harsh. But there has been a tendency for audits to sort of, they shouldn't be, but be a bit of check against standards, and new and innovative things that don't align with standards are often pushed back. And I think, again, subconsciously, the auditors elevate the risk of those because we're not really unpacking that exposure, likelihood, and severity, and just clearly thinking of the outcome. So if you think all the way back to module 1, where I put up that the Melbourne Highway, which was the centre wire rope safety barrier in the flush median, and the median was a bit narrow. I mean, this was a classic for me, where the audit, the road safety auditor was coming back and obsessed with the offset, the deflection of the barrier into this other lane, high risk. Yet the safe system assessment comes back with it just going, like, you have dropped the head-on risk from whatever it was, 48 down to like a 4 or something. The magnitude of drop of the risk there is huge. But what that auditor is fixated on was that 4. So not to say that 4 is not important, and we should continue to work on that, but don't lose sight of what we've just achieved by putting that barrier system in, or what could be achieved. And so that's why I say, like, innovative design, it's a real clean thinking about that. And safe system assessments can be used on program level, can be used on remote communities. Like, you can do a whole town and do a safe system assessment on it. It was a big exercise, but you can. A mine site, I don't know, ski village, whatever you want. It is an elaborate risk assessment methodology. Well, maybe not even elaborate. It's just a risk assessment methodology.
Some questions and comments, please. So Mark says, thinking about comparing designs, we very often have to compare against several objectives, and safety being one of them. So you can see how safety does get diluted throughout the process.
Yeah, yes. And I think we're always going to fight that. I sort of course, I see the world only through a road safety lens. That's all I do. But I do acknowledge that there's people who only see the world through an environmental lens, or only see the world through a traffic operations lens, and so we do have to sort of be aware of that, and we're going to continue into the future to do multi-criteria assessments of infrastructure projects, and our funders are going to, like, holistically look at the benefits of projects all round. But this does give us a pretty good tool as we go into that debate and challenge. And it also, and I think just the way it's laid out means that safety hopefully goes up a few notches in its consideration. But it will, we've got to be realistic here. It will be one of the considerations. It should be it should be safety first, and then we'll work out the rest of it. But likewise, my environmental friends will say protection of the environment is first, and then everything else can come in under.
What would you recommend following a fatal crash? Would it be a road safety audit, a safe system assessment, or something else used at that particular site?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a really good question, because I'm currently working on a course with my colleague Johan Strandrock from Sweden, who is sort of used to be the lead crash investigator for the Swedish Transport Authority, in understanding what safe system characteristics we'd be looking at in fatal crash investigations from a road authority perspective. So usually, you know, they've got their major collision units of highway patrol and things who will get in there and do their stuff. And we're looking at it from a, what can we change in the infrastructure, or what other, or the community aspects of it. So we're working on that. And what we're finding is that the safe system assessment process, there's some really great things in that, again, to sort of segment up the way you think about something like this. Certainly a road safety audit, I would say, is not your, not the best for that, for a number of reasons. I mean, certainly in New Zealand, that's an existing conditions investigation, and that's not a road safety audit. This is not even listed in your road safety audit procedure that you could road safety audit the existing conditions. It's just, it's not that. Now, a similar process may be undertaken, and you'd refer to it as a an investigation, like an analysis or the like. So you might take a similar process. But I think the safe system assessment process for now is a really good one, and I think we'll be back to you with a with something that goes into a bit more detail about some of the investigations and understanding a bit more about the crashes. So for now, though, I'd say utilize the safe system assessment process. It'll help you. It'll help broaden your thinking about the scene. One of the things that's interesting with, you know, fatal crash investigations is the way often that those are utilised by, like, the way that they're written to a degree. So the police often will do their fatality report, and often, and I don't know the inner workings of New Zealand, that will be the one that goes to the coroner. Now, the police have a certain lens on road safety, and I do see a lot of fatal reports that have gone to the coroner, which again are ignoring the big issue. So very much, you know, a blame to a degree, or looking at trying to attribute blame. And so we've got driver who's you know, intoxicated or fatigued or the like, and that becomes the key element of it. The fact that they were driving on a 100-kilometre-per-hour road that was separated by only a centre line and drifted into the oncoming lane and killed multiple people and themselves, the inherent risk there is has often gone sort of spoken in these reports to coroners. And so for us to then get systemic change is a hard thing. But interestingly enough, when I was researching that to do some trainings for the Tasmanian police on safe system to try to improve their presentation of crashes, exactly this, and I called over to my New Zealand colleagues and friends. I called over to Fergus Tate, who you, probably some of you know, and to Colin Brody and Fabian Marsh, and asking around. And the existing New Zealand guidance for coroners, I think, is wonderful. I mean, I know that's world-leading stuff to say, well, hang on, let's talk to the coroners about you know, the system and the safe system. And so when they're receiving these reports, they see it in the whole context, rather than just you know, what's being pushed back by the police. And again, the police are getting better and better at understanding the holistic system and trying to report in a system manner. So yeah, interesting space to play in.
That's all for the minute. Thank you, Ken.
I saw a hand get raised.
Oh, it very quickly got put down, so I suspect it was accidental.
Or is that a wave, like a quick hand up? And, yeah.
If you do want to pop your hand up for real, please do so, and we can unmute you.
Okay. But Kathy, can you just take a note when our Safe System Fatal Crash Investigation course is up and running to share the information with this group, just so if they are in the space of investigating or know the investigators that can be done.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, keep the questions coming in though. This is good. I mean, this is our session to talk broadly about its, safe system assessment's use and what we're doing and how we can get it, how we can get it further progressed. Okay, here we go. The process. Now, I have not talked to you a lot about the difference between a full and a rapid or a light safe system assessment. I will do that shortly though, okay? But the first thing that will need to be done as well, are we going to do a safe system assessment, I suppose, is the first decision. And that one, it will be, I suppose, up to each road controlling authority to decide when do they do safe system assessments, when do they do road safety audits, when do they do nothing. And my recommendation here is that you have some sort of documented policy around that, and do a bit of thinking around it. Have a policy there, get your council to sign it off, or get the business managers to sign it off that says this is when we do these within for different projects, because there's inevitably criticism, and probably rightly so, if it is a complete ad hoc choice of when these are done. You have development A coming online here and development B coming online over there, and you've got development B subject to a full safe system assessment. Development A gets nothing, and it was just because the project manager who was on B had done the safe system assessment course and thought it would be a good idea. In development A, that person hadn't done the course, doesn't know what they are, and he doesn't think there'll be any value to that. Well, we're on an individual opinion sort of basis here. If you've got a nice policy that lays all that out, either neither of them will get it because that's what the policy said and these reasons, or both of them will get it, or it may be based on the speed of the road or something like that, or whatever you've done. So a choice of then, is it a full safe system assessment? A rapid safe system assessment is done by what I'm calling the client. The client is usually the road controlling authority. The team is selected, so that's again the controlling authority and the designer and the like. So who's going to actually do this assessment? Then there's some sort of commencement meeting with the design team and the safe system assessment team. And in that sort of commencement meeting is really that understanding of the project, the context, the way things can be are going to be done, and that then really feeds into those recommendations and getting them aligned with what they're trying to achieve out of this project. There's a look at the plans and the designs and everything like that, and then there's a site inspection. A completion of the safe system assessment matrix. Consider the other elements, the safe system, through the prompt questions and anything else you might think of. Identify treatments to improve alignment with safe system principles based on their existing design. And then you write up the report using some templates that are available. That's handed over. And the clients then to go through those recommendations and respond to them. Yes, we can do this one. We can't do this one. This one's interesting. We like the idea, but we're going to alter this bit, whatever they're saying. That doesn't need to come back to the safe system assessors. It's a nice thing to do though. And then the design is amended and these changes are incorporated into the project. Now, if there's no intention to do any of this, then really you've got to question why a safe system assessment is actually even happening. Maybe it's just to see which of the existing options has best alignment, but even still, you want to be able to then take the best one, or whichever one you do end up with, and understand how you can make it better. So we really do want to see some change happening with this. And if not, it's starting to drift into tick box territory, and don't waste the resources and the energy on it. If it becomes another tick box, we don't. Yeah, I'll be very disappointed if that happens. So that's the process. I'll take questions on the process before I show you what a few other jurisdictions are doing in some of their space, and talk to you about these full and rapid safe system assessments.
Thanks, Ken. We don't have any questions on the process at the moment, but we have a question about crashes. Is there a separate assessment of national statistics of contributing factors to fatal serious injury crashes, or is it sourced from the police and coroner reports?
So there's quite a lot going on in that space. Huge amount of research that goes into that, and you've got some wonderful research organisations in New Zealand working on that sort of stuff. You've got great human factors people doing research continuously on that, universities and the like. So it's just constant spit out of reports which look into factors. So so there's naturalistic sort of driving studies that are done, which is essentially fitting cameras in cars and then letting people just drive the streets and getting intel on factors often associated with behaviour that are being involved in crashes. We've got a lot of vehicle research, so analysing the types of vehicles that have been involved in crashes, going historically through databases and VIN numbers, vehicle numbers, and then comparing that to safety features and those sorts of things. We've got continual work happening in the space of understanding speed and the speed limits and the operating speeds on roads and how that influences crashes. And then there's holistic investigations into the infrastructure. I mean, this is all done, and then you get strategies prepared out of that base of knowledge and intel. So the first port of call, I think, if you're really interested in in-depth stuff in that, is the Wakakatahi sort of library of research and knowledge. Then I'd be looking at the Austroads publications that currently exist that do that, those research reports periodically into that sort of stuff. And then you've got the likes of sort of Monash University Accident Research Centre, Centre for Automotive Safety Research, who are continually sort of publishing information on that. One of the universities in New Zealand has a really active road safety analysis space, and I'm having a mental blank as to which uni it is. Somebody will know that. Waikato, I think it is actually. Anyway, so lots going on in that space, and yeah. Hopefully there's a bit there. But if people have specific questions on a thing, let me know. Feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll see what I can immediately grab out of our database of research reports, or point you at some other stuff.
Thanks, Ken. Back to the process. Should safe system assessments be completed at the project scope phase more than the design phase so that value can be added? Yeah.
So this is just really comes down to the terminology you use for where things are at in a project. So if your project scope phase is sort of, okay, we're going to go with this option with a roundabout here, and you're starting to draw some lines on it, or this, then yeah, that's probably a great time to do it. I kind of see that as drifting into a little bit of concept. Now, I do note though that the New Zealand well, again, I've been reading your road safety audit procedure guidelines document of late, and you sort of use concept as this, in that document at least, quite a large envelope of project life cycle. So from very early sketches and ideas and probably what you'd call scoping phase, all the way through to almost functional design, is sort of generally packaged within what I'm calling concept here. So, but yes, I mean, having a blank bit of paper and saying, well, what should we do? The assessment process, I mean, the existing conditions could be done, and then you could look at where risks lie and you know, which scores are coming out higher. So that may help inform some of your ideas. Yeah, so that might be an option.
In a large project, can you pick and choose certain points or sections to do a safe system assessment on, or do you have to do the whole project to get benefit?
You could pick and choose. It's a bit of my experience with some of the major project teams is that if you did let them pick and choose, they would pick and choose the bits that are going to come out well and not get you to assess some of the bits that don't, because they know that they don't and they don't want that documented anywhere. And I mean, that's because their objective is to get this project built, and you know, and there's lots of constraints in that area, and so they don't want any more trouble around that. So I just a little bit of caution around that. But yeah, technically you could pick areas. There is a fact sheet that we provided on how do you do a larger project and how do you segment it up and how do you do that safe system assessment. So have a read of that fact sheet as well. But no, the process is not so set yet that you've got anything that says, no, you must do this. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. We're at the 1 hour mark. Should we have a quick break at this point, or?
Yeah, let's have a quick break. Don't have too much more to cover in the process, and then just a few little highlights of roads and finishing off. So hopefully, yeah, we'll leave people with a bit of time to get back to their safe system assessments. Okay, but let's have a 3-minute break?
3 minutes sounds good. Thanks, Ken.
Okay. So let's keep ticking along. Please keep the questions coming in. Just point you at a few of what's happening in some other jurisdictions. I'll start with Victoria. So the Safe System Engineering team in the Victorian government has produced quite a few resources. So the guidelines which we provided you, which really follow the Austroads procedure, but add some more details, clarify a few things. And then you can see there the rapid and the full safe system assessment template are available. So those are what people tend to follow. It's what I gave you as your template to use was the rapid one, but the Victorian government said, please use these, rebrand them, copy everything. Just let's try and get a bit of consistency in what's being produced, which I think is a great thing. The Victorian government also publishes a list of recommended safe system assessors, and this is sort of the pathway for getting onto that list, which shows there that you sort of show an interest in this sort of stuff. You complete a course, you complete this course, and then you get some real world experience, and then you submit in a safe system assessment, which gets reviewed, and either you put on or they feed back information, and you can have another go at it or resubmit another one and give you some feedback. So that's good. And then they just got a PDF of recommended safe system assessors, which sort of just shows their name, organisation, email address, and you know, that list is building quite nicely, and that's wonderful to see. We want an army of safe system assessors out there. So that's Victoria, and then I talked about the corporate requirements on a full or a rapid safe system assessment, or no safe system assessment at all. And again, I don't think New Zealand's got anything in place at the moment, but it's something that may come. But just to again show you what some other jurisdictions are doing, the Victorians will say that under $2 million, do a rapid safe system assessment if you determine that a formal assessment is required. But if you're not going to do that, you've got to have a way to show that you've considered safe system principles in the project for all projects. So it's probably, you know, kind of try and cover off sort of minor projects, and it can be sort of showing that some safe system thinking has been put into it, but we're not going to go through this full process for the small projects. The 2 to 5 million, well, they're saying a full safe system assessment should be done for all complex projects or where there's significant risk of fatal serious injury or anything innovative, but a rapid safe system assessment for any low risk projects and some sort of risk filtering mechanism at the start, and any repeat assessments. And then above 5 million, it's just full safe system assessment for all projects. Like there's no ifs or buts about it, just has to be done. And only a rapid can be done if a full assessment has been done and they're doing a repeat assessment, for example. So they've maybe assessed at the start and done a few designs, have gone through the safe system assessment process, then they go away and they go, oh, we're going to alter this. And actually it's changed quite significantly. Can you do another safe system assessment on it? Then it could be a rapid. So that's just when these things are happening. And I'll now just cover off what's a full safe system assessment, what's in a rapid safe system assessment, and then I'll take some questions. Rapid, Queensland calls it a light. I don't know if they spell it L-I-T-E or L-I-G-H-T. I think they actually spell it light. Light safe system assessment. Rapid in Victoria and South Australia. So a full safe system assessment has in it the commencement meeting, the background and context, the workshop. It's said optional there. That's where you're in the room with, or you know, online with the project team and the designers and talking about, you know, why they've done different things. The reason I suppose it's optional is because some of the projects are quite clean cut, or it's a, you know, the assessors know the context of the project quite well or the like. So anyway, site inspection, existing conditions matrix, then all the design options get their own matrix, just as you're doing in yours. Other safe system elements, design changes are recommended, and then the full reporting, and then obviously they take on any changes they can, and rescore if necessary. So that's probably one thing I haven't talked about. If you do a safe system assessment, so you do the existing conditions and maybe a few design options, and they say, right, thank you for that, and we've actually elected to take design option 1, and thanks for your extra recommendations, and we're going to do these 3 of them, and here's the new design. Then they might say, can you score that? And then you score that. It's got to be the same safe system assessment team to keep that continuity, that consistency of scoring. Then you might be able to do one final scoring, and that actually shows quite a nice story, because it says, well, we had these 3 options and they all scored here. The existing conditions was here. So we, you know, they were all good. Well, this one was best, and we actually decided to go with that one. And we even improved it further, and the score came down to here. And so what a wonderful sort of story to the, you know, the director, the executive director, the chief executive, or whoever, or the like, to say, look at this process. We've come from here, we've got to here, we've improved it, and we're all the way down to here in terms of alignment with safe system principles. So it's wonderful. So a lot, and so then the amendments are done to the design. The rapid or the light, what goes from that, the difference, it's probably easiest if I do that. There's really no need for the workshop. Now, you might get some project background and context through an email or quick chat. The site inspection is sort of taken away as mandatory. I still do site inspections in Rapids, but it's not specifically identified there. So that would be one that goes. You still do the matrix. You don't do the prompt questions and go through that process of thinking about all the other elements of the safe system. That's not part of it. So you'll notice in the one that you're doing, we've given you the light, so you haven't got those questions about, what post-crash care, the particular road user behaviour and those sorts of things. So it's a bit quicker and, as we say, lighter. So you still make recommendations in that. You obviously do the rapid report, which is a bit less there, and the rest of the process is pretty much the same. So the difference here is maybe it's 30% less effort or something like that, but you're still doing the bulk of the work anyway. So I don't think it's sort of like one's a 1 hour exercise and one's a 2-week exercise. No, they're sort of both generally about the same effort as a road safety audit. And this one just a little bit less effort in a few ways. So any questions or comments before I jump into some different road stereotypes, road environments? We have a chat about that?
Yes, thank you, Ken. Lots of good thinking happening with this group. So the safety and health outcomes, such as physical inactivity and vehicle emissions of transport projects, both impact on disability adjusted life years. Is there any framework for assessing health and safety at the same time?
Not that I am aware of. So important stuff, but I don't know enough about that. I would hazard a guess there's lots of people who have different tools and models to assess some of this stuff. I just don't know of it. I'll be welcoming anybody else in the group to jump in and let us know of anything in that space. Sorry, I'm not much help there.
All good. Can you tell us about whether the VicRoads SSA and project cost criteria meets the Waka Kotahi funding requirements? Might need some more information about that one. Hold on. Funding rules in New Zealand require an RSA to be completed at all stages of a project or an exemption provided.
Yeah.
Nothing on SSA that Eric is aware of.
Yes. I mean, I don't know the intricacies of the funding requirements for Waka Kotahi, but let me just say they are working on that, and the fact that you had in your recent release of a road safety strategy the acknowledgement of safe system assessments is an important part of any project. I dare say that if it doesn't exist now, it will soon as a requirement. Now, what Victoria has done, so there's a few things. Queensland has basically said we will do a safe system assessment on everything. That's their policy. And it's kind of a bit the same unless an exemption is provided, as Eric sort of said. So they don't have a direct exemption form like New Zealand has, where you can go onto the Waka Kotahi website, get a exemption form from doing a road safety audit. But Queensland doesn't have a specific exemption form, but they have some maybe internal process of saying, well, we're not going to do safe system assessments on these. But they basically just said, yeah, we're doing it on everything. Victoria put together that that policy position. They have a road safety audit and safe system assessment policy, which says this is where we're going to do it. You know, I just talked you through a little bit of it there, and they have said basically for early stages of a project, if you do a safe system assessment, it replaces the need for a road safety audit at that same stage, because we know the process will cover everything that an audit will, that we're interested in, and so we don't want extra red tape just for the sake of it. And if we're covering off those things early on, then that's enough. So I think that's quite a logical thing to do. I really hate the idea of just adding more processes to infrastructure projects, because there's so many already. So if we could just replace one that does the same but better, for that, that'd be good.
Thank you. And a comment's come through from George saying he believes safe system assessment can be part of Road to Zero pipeline funding from NZTA. So we might put that one out to the group as well, if anybody can confirm or deny that one.
Well, it's interesting that this I find as well with a lot of jurisdictions who are getting into safe system assessment is that we actually do safe system assessments on the projects that probably need it least. And so I know New Zealand's been doing a lot of safe system assessments on the safety program, and you kind of go, yeah, and that's good, and you do get value out of it. But I'm always like going, well, that was people with a 100% safety lens looking at this road and going, what can we do to alter it? I mean, it's going to be good, yeah, but we might be able to get a few more things out of it. But I want those public transport projects. I want any traffic congestion easing style projects. Absolutely, we've got to get them assessed. We've got to get the the new multimodal transport interchange assessed. Active transport facilities assessed. Where there's chance that, okay, I mean, they're all going to try their best to ensure that it's safe, but you're getting these particular now view of it from that safe system perspective, which may not exist in the project team and the design team as is. But if you're hitting up their safety program only, they're going to be probably thinking this way anyway. So yeah, some policy and process changes to ensure that it happens is a good thing.
That's all for the minute, Ken. Thank you. We'll let you carry on.
Okay. Well, I only have one last little thing to do with this group before we set them free into the world to go and assess things under the safe system assessment process. So it's just to take the group through some road environments and just touch on what aligns well with safe system principles and what doesn't. Now, we've kind of been doing this throughout the whole course anyway. But the thing is that at the end of this course, once you successfully hand over your safe system assessment and I mark it and go, well done, you got above 80% on that, and you've completed all your quizzes and assignments, and here's a certificate that says you've successfully completed a safe system assessment course. And that's as good as it gets in New Zealand in terms of you being able to say, I'm a safe system assessor and I can do safe system assessments. And the thing is that you'll only really have been done a safe system assessment on one particular road environment, road stereotype, intersection. And really, we want to ensure that you have the ability to do that anywhere. Motorway, local urban street, shopping strip, you name it, we want you to be able to assess it. Now, you just follow the process and you should be pretty right. When you get to trying to make recommendations and things, a few ideas we'll just jump through in this. And so I might do this with a little bit of the way we've been doing things in past modules where I'll get people to write in a few ideas, but I'm just going to cover off these different road environments. So I'll go through those one at a time. So let's talk about sort of residential local street sort of environments. Here's a little picture of one, and we've got the local street with houses. We've got like an arterial road down the end, or a collector, high volume collector road down the end. It's got a stop sign there, you can see. Speed limit is 50 km/h default speed. Now just maybe type in a few ideas on things that you can alter in the road environment to improve alignment with safe system principles. And like always, tell us whether they're going to influence exposure, likelihood, and or severity. So I'll give you a second to do that. And I'm just going to jot down a couple of ideas, and the first people to put in there these ideas win a prize. Not to say that they're the only things or the best things, they're just a few ones that I'm just going to jot down. Because I realised I hadn't given out any prizes yet today, Kathy. Good. All right. I'm seeing wonderful stuff coming in there. So we've got a lot of people talking about speed reduction, getting speeds down. And I think the first one to get it in there, also with traffic calming, was Mark. So prize for Mark, because I certainly have that on my list. Actually, I had that on my list as a sort of second one, where I was saying, and there it is, Eric's got it shortly after that, which was to block. Can we close the access here? Do we need that full access? So when we're looking at these environments, do we need the permeability, the movement through there? And then if we say yes, or even when we have it as a dead end street or a cul-de-sac or the like, how do we reduce speeds? And traffic calming is great. So we've got those are some really quick principles of how we're going to get better alignment with safe system principles: reducing exposure by closing the road off, reducing severity by reducing the speed, which will also probably reduce the likelihood as well. Lots of then traffic calming things, so raised platforms and the like. We've got some comments around street lighting as well to reduce the likelihood of crashes. Yep, so those sort of things can be absolutely looked at, and it's right. That was spot on. It's a likelihood factor. Lots of some more people wanting to shut the road, which is good to look at. So yeah, all the things around things like trimming trees to improve visibility are likelihood factors. They're good. They are within the likelihood factor. So I've got a question here that's coming in. How would safe system view a one-lane give-way traffic calming device? Well, pretty well, because so that we know that they will reduce speed, and that's going to give us benefits from both likelihood and severity of crashes. And in these sorts of environments, they tend to do that really well. The likelihood of crashes was a little bit up with confusion, but it's so far swamped by the reduction in severity that it performs absolutely beautifully. And we did a safe system assessment, snippet on one-way slow points, which is what we would call them. So Kathy, we could share that one as well if you can dig it out, or maybe just the link to that on the on our website. So getting those travel speeds down, I think, then brings us into the realm of not having to be too concerned about crash energy for vehicle occupants, because your speeds are down within all tolerable limits for that, and trying to then make them within tolerable limits for pedestrian cyclists. Yeah, again, thinking holistically about the safe system, trying to ensure that our road users are very, you know, they're thinking about safety, thinking about the right gear, so good to see helmets on and those sorts of things. So holistically thinking about the system as well. Parking's an interesting one. Somebody's brought up parking. Can we remove the parking? Well, that does open up sight lines, which reduces the likelihood of crashes. But I'm always conscious that if you remove parking, we make a wider road and we get potential for more speed. So if you are removing parking, you want to complement it with speed reduction measures, local area traffic management, and even things like narrowing the road with, maybe curb out stands or the like. All right, I'm not going to go through this one in much detail because it's got some similar characteristics, but this is, we're talking areas, strip shopping center areas, areas of high activity, potentially, areas where there's drinking establishments, and you would really categorize this as highly place value. There's a lot of place value here. And this is where you really want to make vehicles either not there at all, just turn this into a mall, or be so out of place, if that makes sense. But you see, this is built up around a road, really, hasn't it? So it's still a road and people crossing the road as such. All of these pedestrians, the way this kind of looks is like that they are the odd ones out here. They're in the car's territory. Whereas we want to sort of flip that on its head in these sorts of environments and make it so the cars are the ones in the pedestrians area. And so as a result of that, we get these really low travel speeds of cars. And you get better livability and you get a whole lot of other benefits and more vibrant and everything like that. But the result is that speed of vehicles is so slow. Unfortunately, this area has quite high traffic speeds and as a result has a horrific pedestrian crash history as well. So we need to really start to alter our thinking on that. And this, again, due to its high place value, like people often go, well, we want to fence this off, we want to fence this off and force them to walk down the road here and cross, and then walk up the road here and cross at this pedestrian crossing. Well, by doing that, you've eroded the place value of it. You might get better alignment with safe system principles, but it's not a great way to do it. You also might cause other trouble. If you do that, and people decide, oh, well, I'm going to walk on the other side of this pedestrian fence to where I want to go to. So be cautious about that. But certainly in these high place values, permeability, interaction, movement, all super important.
There's just a comment that's come through, Ken, in just an interesting point. In Liverpool, in the UK, we couldn't specify bollards less than 1 metre high due to partially cited safety risk.
Yeah, I think that's it's an interesting point into the sort of intricacies of some of that stuff. And that sort of thing is important for us to sort of ponder. And road safety audits really get into a lot of that level of detail in that pondering. So I haven't thought too much about that. Interesting though. Thank you. All right, quick prize for somebody who can tell me where this is. It's got a pack and save, so it's definitely in New Zealand. Oh, look at them come in. think, who was it? We'll give it to Erin. No, we'll give it to David there, who was in with Hamilton very quickly, as was Eric. And George. Oh my gosh, people know Hamilton. Lots of people scrambling to try and write Hamilton. So I've sort of popped this in as a mixed-use arterial picture. Same thing. Let's do that little exercise while we're at our keyboards typing. What could we do to improve alignment with safe system principles? So we've got a arterial road here. It's got multiple lanes, bus stops, traffic signals. What's the speed limit there? It's either 50 or 60. 50? 50, I think it is, just on the outskirts of town. It's probably in town, actually. On the outskirts is a bit harsh. So 50 kilometre per hour speed limit. And that's sort of starting to be built up. So pop in a few ideas, things that we could improve alignment with safe system principles, and exposure likelihood and severity. All right. Seen some wonderful ideas coming in here, and I'm loving the categorization of them as well. So we've got the idea of a central island of some description and some crossing facilities, reducing the likelihood. Yeah, the severity would be reduced if some speed management features were in there as well. Raised safety platforms, absolutely. I think those are certainly going to be the way we'll do this. Potentially combining that. So you've got some dedicated crossing points and some speed calming features like a raised platform across there. It may not be, it just may be the ramp angle and the design of it being such that it's not the necessarily sort of 20 kilometre per hour one that we often think of, but maybe it's the 30 or the 40 design. So it's certainly going to slow vehicles as they go through, and the crossing points are there. So you're going to get nice reductions in the severity of crashes. Lots of stuff here about central medians, crossing breaks, which absolutely will do a good job. So these ones, we've got certainly a lot of movement, prioritization. And so you need to acknowledge that and keep things moving along in terms of vehicles. So I think there's some great options there. Cyclists and cycleways, separated cycle facilities, absolutely. That'll be a nice one to either reduce the likelihood, depending on how it's done, or the exposure to crashes for cyclists. And yeah, lots of central median discussions, lots of ideas of raised sections, being at raised intersections, not left in, left out for some of the side roads and the access points to reduce the likelihood of crashes there. Absolutely, that's excellent stuff. And then even people sort of questioning is a 50 kilometre per hour speed limit required here, or could we move this down to a 40 or the like? And so those who know the context of it will have different opinions on this. That will certainly reduce likelihood and severity of crashes if that was to happen. You might get a small reduction in speed. You want to obviously complement it with some other stuff if you could. So I think, again, a wonderful sort of array there. I haven't got through them all, but everybody's thinking along some wonderful lines there. So we are now, looking at all the likelihood things, but still trying to hit up the severity of crashes as well. these roads are going to be really, really challenging for us in a number of ways. And these are what are the low volume rural roads. And this is one of many, many, many out there. Hundreds of thousands of kilometres of this sort of stuff, and lower standard than this. And they're high speed, and the likelihood of crash and the severity of crash both score very highly. The exposure is down, but nonetheless, there's so much of it out there for us to treat. So how do we do this? This is really going to be hard. The simple theoretical answer is that you get the speed significantly down. Really get the speeds down, because the impact will only be to a small number of our communities. So it's not going to have major economic impacts. They're not major freight routes. They're not. But the practical reality of that is the sort of public pushback we're going to see as that happens. So we need to, carefully think about that. New Zealand's certainly leading the way in some of the big picture speed management strategies and thinking about these roads. So you've got some good stuff happening there. There's a lot that can be done from reducing the likelihood of crashes, and that's everything from audio tactile center lines, sealed shoulders, better delineation, wide center lines, maybe stealing a little bit of the lane width to have a wide center line, and accepting that a truck might be very tied up, but that'll help by slowing people down anyway. And then some potential severity measures on your highest risk. The reason, a full containment barrier system, beautiful. That would get really great alignment with safe system principles. The cost of that for a low volume road, though, just doesn't make holistic strategic sense. So, but we are going to be looking at speed limits on these roads. It needs to be a crafted, strategic way of doing it. And it's not something that I think can sort of drop overnight that we do that. Interestingly, though, some countries around the world have dropped it overnight, and as in the default speed limit on these roads has gone down to an 80 or a 70 kilometre per hour, and then they've raised the speed limit on roads that are appropriate. And this would not be one, but they've got the raising of the speed limit. But I think, we're a little bit away from that in Australia and New Zealand at the moment. But things like point-to-point speed cameras, mobile point-to-point, so at least keeping people within, lower speed, so lowering the likelihood. You can't say it's going to do a huge amount for severity, maybe on a few crashes, but the difference between sort of 110 and 100 on this, the severity is still going to be a 4 coming out of that anyway, for run-off road, for head-on, or the like. So really challenging road environments. We move on from that to sort of some higher volume rural roads, your State Highway 1, I think this is, maybe. Anyway, for these ones, we're looking to actually start to implement that full separation with a central barrier system and outer barrier systems in that continuous way, if we can. Where it's rolled out and how it's rolled out over time, there's a lot of detailed thinking to be done there. But really, we are trying to address the severity of crashes. The likelihood of crashes has been brought down a bit because it's got some really good features already. It's got sealed shoulders, it's got good line marking, it's got some audio tactile center line. Doesn't appear to have audio tactile edge line. But we're pretty good there. There's more that obviously can continue to be done, but the severity of crash here is pretty much unaddressed, because the head-on risk is, when the head-ons happen, they're going to be high speed, high impact when the run-off roads happen. And we're seeing some wonderful upgrades of these sorts of roads across New Zealand with the central system, barrier systems and outer barrier systems. And so I think there's a lot going on there. When you get to the intersections on these roads, though, we've got to have to think about how we manage those. I mean, when you do a central barrier system, and if you can put a roundabout here, what you actually do is provide opportunity for accesses. If there's an access point there, or further up, another 500 meters up, or side road or the like, they can come out there. You could even provide them with some sort of acceleration lane into there. This is way up, but then a roundabout as their way to go back and do their U-turn around there. So, I mean, there's this beautiful theoretical way of doing continuous barrier systems and roundabouts, and you actually cover your whole length of your higher volume highway system in a really highly aligned, safe system manner, because you've eliminated the cross-traffic crashes. You've put roundabouts as these U-turn locations. Now, that's sort of the theory. And then when you get out there to try and do it, you've got, what distance is appropriate for somebody to travel the wrong way to get back the other way. And then also thinking about what type of U-turn facilities can you do if you can't afford the roundabout or it's inappropriate, and lots of different stuff going on there. And I think there's currently a bit of work happening from WSB Opus are doing some work in New Zealand there on different facilities to provide those U-turn opportunities. So I'm sort of sent a few different ideas over to them, or the different things that have been happening. But it's interesting space. If then we can talk about reducing speeds through the intersection if we can't do that. So things like RIORs, the rural intersection activated warning signs, or activated speed signs, are a very good approach to reduce the likelihood of crashes and a little bit the severity as well, I suppose. So some options available there. And then all the good stuff at an intersection that is likelihood based as well. So sight lines, lighting, splitter islands, offset. They all reduce the likelihood of crashes, but we do need to think about how we're going to address the severity at this location as well. Kathy, questions, comments before I finish off with a couple more roads and then we have a general wrap up?
Thanks, Ken. You seem to favour narrow lanes for speed reduction over wider ones, which would appear to reduce runoff or head-on risk. How much is speed reduced?
No, it's not as much the speed reduction that I'm targeting with the narrower lanes. It's the separation. So you do get a little bit of speed reduction. Again, we did a little safe system snippet on this. So there's some research around the world just showing different lane widths and the road safety outcomes you expect. A 3.5 metre lane is great on an area where you have appropriate separation or the like. The 3.5 metre lane where the separation is a white line, I will favour getting more separation and eating into some of the lane width, reducing the lane width to gather that separation. Ideally, keep your 3.5 and just move it all over, but you sometimes fall into non-full depth shoulders in terms of the pavement, so they will break up quickly. Sometimes you're into unsealed shoulders and those sorts of things as well.
Thank you. Another question in the this one here, you've got the high-low rural road intersections. What success have you had with regards to relocating or undergrounding overhead power lines? Is this a project cost, and do you get any opposition from service providers? And Sebastian's come through with a comment on that, saying that the cost is usually the transport agency doing the project.
Yeah, I mean, the cost of undergrounding power is obscene, and yeah, in my experience, the utility providers are generally not hugely interested in forking out their money to do that. If you can convince them, that's great. But yeah, I mean, service relocations and the like are such a huge expense in these sorts of projects. And like this intersection I'm using as an example, I think, I mean, it's set up beautifully for a roundabout, isn't it? They've even acquired the right land, everything's good. But I mean, you just go, oh my God, this is going to cost a bomb. Power, and it does. And we see that's why we're seeing, I mean, part of the reason we're seeing roundabouts costing 4, 5, 6, 7 million. No worries. And this is again though where we're doing a lot more work now on compact roundabouts. Now, even a compact roundabout here, you're going to need to move these services. But yeah, no, definitely a consideration. Yeah, I don't think I'll add any more to that. It's sort of a stop there or talk for 2 days.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay. The high volume outer suburban arterial roads, some people might call these the traffic sewers of the world. That's a bit harsh maybe, but we are trying to continue and maintain a movement of vehicles. That's been seen as its priority. And so we can't be mixing vulnerable road users on the road like this. Have to provide separated facilities, dedicated separated facilities. Because the reality is if you don't, we're going to have to reduce travel speed down significantly on these roads in order to get better alignment with safe system principles. What these areas do is start to be in the movement categorization. You can restrict. So pedestrian fencing is appropriate can be appropriate in these locations, but you want to provide dedicated facilities for crossing and still thinking about the energy at intersections, energy at any crossing points, but you might look at sort of your overpasses, underpasses for pedestrians and the like. You need to think about speed on any entries like this. I mean, can we close off these sort of gaps and have them go in and find a safer way somehow? Because we still have potential for high energy crashes like that. Signalizing it reduces the likelihood, but even still, we need to think about the energy there. So just a few little ideas there. Motorways actually have really good alignment with safe system principles usually because we've reduced the exposure of any pedestrian cyclists by banning them usually. Again, you got to think about people getting out of their car, broken down vehicles or the like, which appear as pedestrian crashes, and there's something to work on there. But from a safe system assessment perspective, you tend to be putting pretty low scores for likelihood, and likelihood especially goes really down on these. Severity is generally pretty good for passenger vehicles. As I say, any vulnerable road users obviously in a lot of trouble, but we've got continuous barrier systems. Yeah, they're not the most flexible barrier systems, so they mightn't get extremely low scores, but they're there. We're not having exposure to head-on crashes, and so we've got quite a well-aligned safe system area from a lot of perspectives. The point where we see a lot of crashes in these areas is actually due very much to flow breakdown. So we see the motorways performing really well when they're free flowing, performing really well from a death and serious injury perspective when they're absolutely stuffed, they're not moving, really congested. It's as they sort of break down in flow is where we see the challenges. And that's because we've got the speed up with the energy for death and serious injury, and we've got then the turbulence and the crashes going to happen. So managed motorways are really our big ticket item here. So that's managing, holding the motorway's hand as it breaks down in terms of lowering speed limits proactively as You know, your algorithms show that it's starting to get to a point where it's going to go bad. Free ramp metering the entries, so you're sort of helping from that perspective, and the ability to monitor and manage incidents and broken down vehicles or pedestrians that have found their way out there, so you can use your managed motorway system for that. And finally, the major rural highways. We talked a little bit about this already, but continuous barrier systems, just absolutely. And we're not going to need to have these large areas unless you want to, provide facilities for a third lane into the future. Continuous barrier systems, absolutely. And again, managing speed, angles at intersections, maybe having so if you've got like a intersection, there, looking at the ideas of blocking off large acceleration areas long enough to get up to speed, so the delta V between the vehicle coming through and the entering vehicle is very low, then enough distance that they can then get to a U-turn facility and another acceleration back in the U-turn facility with the same idea. So then they can, so that's, it takes space, but you kind of on these long routes have that kind of space available to you. So a bit of that sort of thinking as well. But in the like overpasses, obviously, so we can continue that without exposure to that crash, or in the interim, maybe some rural intersection activated warning signs. Okay, so skip through at the end there. I think just touching on quite a few. I'll take a couple of questions, then I'll just summarize. And I always think with this last module that it'll all finish nice and early, but time flies when you're having fun. Okay, any final questions or comments there, Kathy? Questions?
Not at the minute, but I'm sure people are typing them in. But I might just show people a couple of things if that's okay, Ken.
Please.
Great, thank you. So do get any last questions or comments in now. Just wanted to alert you to, if you want a nice, easy way to make your graph for your assignment, we've popped in here an assignment graph generator, and it looks a little bit like this. So all you need to do is, keeping the consistent theme here of filling in just the highlighted bits in yellow. So pop your numbers in here for your existing conditions and your design option, and like magic, a graph will appear for you there, which you can just copy and pop into your assignment. And what else do we have? We also have, so you've got another week to complete that and submit it. And at that time, Ken will do some marking over the next week or so after that, and give you some feedback and a score. And then you, assuming you've finished all your quizzes and everything else, you can download your certificate electronically. If you haven't, or you need some more assistance with it, then do get in touch. So that's your assessment there. I've popped in there a couple of those snippets that you talked about today, Ken, and there is a short quiz, again, our last quiz that you have to do.
And certificates?
Oh, yeah, there they are. Sorry. Good point. So then if you could give us some, well, you kind of have to give us some feedback on the course in order to get your certificate, because I made that happen. Just a very quick course feedback survey there, and then your certificate will appear once you've met all those requirements.
Wonderful.
We'll
Thanks,
also
Kath.
post a hard copy to you in the mail, along with any prizes that you've won, if you've won some along the way, once it's all finished. So over the next course of a few weeks, I guess. So I think that's everything. Do we have any last questions or comments?
Okay. Well, let me just say thank you to everybody. Really just wonderful interaction from this group. I know how busy you all are, so the fact that you took time out of your amazingly hectic schedule to look into this and is really fantastic. And I genuinely think that this is a amazing opportunity for us to inject safe system thinking into projects. So go out there and just do them on everything. Get people, in people's faces to a degree and say, hey, can I do a safe system assessment on that project? And I am happy to send you examples of safe system assessments or point you at different bits of information. I just want these to be happening because I know that's how we're going to get change for the better in our projects. So please just get out there and do them and encourage people to do them, and talk to people about exposure, likelihood, severity especially. And I think we'll get some wonderful outcomes. So thank you so much. Thanks again, Kathy, for all your organising and work behind the scenes to make these happen. Thanks again to everybody. And yeah, look forward to seeing you at the next course, maybe the fatal crash investigation safe system one, if we have to get our act together and get that moving along a bit. So thank you very much. Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks,
you,
Ken.
everyone.
And yes, thank you again for everyone for your engagement, and thank you to Waka Kotahi for putting this on and organising it from their end. Amazing commitment to it. Thanks for your passion, Ken.
Yeah, and so actually on that, if you did enjoy it, shoot Maria an email and tell her that you appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.